be it in East Pakistan or in we keep saying no, it's the leadership. No. Why? The people of Pakistan had an opportunity only 1 year before that. In December 1917, I remember as a lieutenant, I had to go out to conduct those famous 1970 elections. They had the opportunity to see through the designs of the leadership. And they should have corrected. Because we say ultimately, the ultimate wisdom is of the people. That wisdom of the people didn't come into play, whether it was in East Pakistan or whether it was in West Pakistan. It should have defanged the ambitions, the raw personal ambitions of the leadership at that time. Whether it was Mujibur Rahman there or whether it was Bhutto here, it did not happen. So merely putting it on leadership or leadership at that time, I think is somewhat unfair because, as I said, it started from 1947, it continued, all leaders, and those leaders were not only leaders from West Pakistan, you had very, very eminent personalities, Khwaja Nazimuddin, Hussain Shahid Sarwardi, and many others who were in those positions who could have applied corrections way earlier. It did not happen. Fine, the villains for us are General Yahya, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, but frankly speaking, the slide was on from 1947. And as Zubair Saab said earlier, it would have happened. Why would it have happened? It would have happened because of the physical distances. Despite all these problems and issues, if there wasn't such a big physical distance between East and the West wings, whatever India would have tried would not have succeeded. It could only succeed because 1,000 miles, and that 1,000 miles was Indian territory. It wasn't even neutral territory that we could say, no, fine. So this is something which is very important to understand for our present and our future generations. But the saving grace in that is, please remember, after 1971, you would recall when the then Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi claimed the sinking of the two-nation theory. They did not succeed in that. The two-nation theory never sank. What is Bangladesh? It's one of the biggest Muslim countries. It would have sunk if Bangladesh had been absorbed into India. Now, why I'm saying this is because this will set the direction of the future between the two countries and the two people who have a common history, and it's now up to them to evolve a common vision and a common future. Pakistan's failure to strengthen its political institutions and our political dissensions were an invitation for disaster. So this was one aspect I thought I will highlight. The second thing that I wanted to focus on in the context of present-day Pakistan is what I describe as the Bangladesh syndrome. What has happened is that since 1971, since we were so traumatized, we could never imagine, because whatever may have been the grievances of our brothers in then East Pakistan, we never thought it would lead to such a traumatic separation. It was unthinkable for us. So that trauma continues, and that it is reflected in our politics, in our security policies, in our day-to-day living. You see it in our media every day. If somebody says something against the government in power, oh my God, At the back of our mind is Bangladesh. At the back of our mind is 1971. Is Balochistan going to separate? Is Sindh going to separate? Is the KP going to separate? Is there going to be another Mukti Bahini? Are the Indians going to succeed one more time? Frankly speaking, we have to get out of this Bangladesh syndrome. As I told you, despite all Indian machinations, it would not have happened but for that physical distance of 1,000 miles. If that had not been there, regardless of anything, they would not have succeeded. So those circumstances no more exist in West Pakistan. And I am intentionally focusing on this Bangladesh syndrome. We have to come out of this for the future of a strong Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, Ali has done a great thing by his objective analysis of the events leading to the debacle. But in my view, it is not enough. I feel this 50 years anniversary of 1971 should be an occasion for introspection. The important thing is, what introspection? How much have you progressed since the late 60s and the eve of 1971? How much have we progressed in terms of our national identity and nation building, our political stability and rule of law, our ethnic divisions and provincial disharmony, our issues of governance, the issues of extremism and sectarianism, internal security and our internal fault lines. Are they still there? If they are still there, then I am afraid there's something seriously wrong. We need to look at that. Of course, then there are issues of our economic security, energy and food security, water security. Now, how much have we had a look at the Hamudur Rahman Commission report and see what are its recommendations? How have we implemented those recommendations? Which one we didn't implement? There was a good reason at that time, immediately after 1971, to not go into various measures, because the slogan that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto as the Prime Minister gave was, and it's very common now, was Naya Pakistan. He said, we are going to have a new Pakistan. You keep hearing Naya Pakistan now also. So it made sense to focus on nation building, national morale, reviving and going on a new path, on a new trajectory. But we shouldn't forget the Hamudur Rahman Commission report. We shouldn't forget the lessons that we have learned or the lessons that were highlighted. It's very important that we keep those in mind and keep ticking what we do and keep reminding ourselves what we have not done. I mean, our political or security policies must be looked at. Even our higher direction of war must be looked at. How we are going to conduct or direct our future wars. Those are very important things. Those are lessons that we learned the hard way. And if we still decide to dump them or keep them in our lockers, then I am afraid Ali's effort and efforts of many other authors and intellectuals who keep reminding of this huge, huge debacle in our history would have gone waste. Ali, you did a very important thing in that book, and that was to remind me about Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. And I am so happy you did that. And those of you who read the book must please read. Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, for the younger ones, was the president of the Indian National Congress. And he wrote a book Earlier he had been expressing these thoughts, but then he wrote it down as a book. And the name of the book was The Man Who Knew the Future of Pakistan Before It Became Independent, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. He knew about the future of Pakistan before it became independent. He wrote this, that this is what Pakistan will ultimately end up being. It's very important. I'll just read 3-4 lines. Kitab unne likhi. The book was on Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. It was written, I think it was an interview initially to Shoresh Kashmiri, and then subsequently it came out as a book by him. But interesting thing was, and it's very important for, when I talked earlier of introspection, I'm only mentioning this by way of the introspection. He said, and it's somebody who was the most rabid enemy of the Qaid and one of the most rabid enemy for the creation of an independent Islamic Pakistan. But he wrote, but he was a Muslim. He was the poster boy of the Indian National Congress's claim to being an inclusive polity, secularism. He was their poster boy. They would put him up front. And he said, incompetent, he's talking about the future Pakistan, incompetent political leadership will pave way for military dictatorships like other Muslim countries. There will be a heavy burden of foreign debts, and there will be unfriendly neighbors, and armed conflicts, and there will be internal unrest. And he goes on, and there will be loot of national wealth by the new rich and the industrialists. And there will be dissatisfaction of youth with religion and the ideology of Pakistan. And there will be international conspiracies to control Pakistan. Now, why did I say that? Why have I included this specifically? That we have to prove these enemies of Pakistan wrong. Unless we can do that, we will not be able to aspire for a strong, prosperous future for Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, great nations always remember history and honor their heroes. And I am glad Ali has done that in highlighting some of these people. Although very interestingly, when you say that General Sahibzada Yaqub Khan and Admiral Ehsan and was he Air Commodore or Masood? They told General Yahya, they spent hours explaining to General Yahya that there should be no military operation. The most interesting insight is that General Yahya agreed with them. He said, yes, I absolutely agree with what you are saying. But then there is a dynamic of an environment which ultimately, it strategically sucks you into a situation which you cannot move out of. And that had happened way before their meetings in Dhaka to discuss whether there should be a military operation or not. So that is what the study of history, the study of higher direction of war, the inclusive working of politico-security policies demand. And if you will do that correctly, then you won't end up that situation when you all think they shouldn't have a military operation and you still will get into a military operation. That is an important lesson from that. Now, with regards to the future relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh, I entirely agree with you, your Hali, your sentiments. That's very important. But there are 2-3 things. We have to have our feet firm on ground. First of all, we don't want this periodic racking up of emotional issues. And on that, there has to be reciprocity. It cannot be one-sided. We cannot wish it and it will happen. Unless it is reciprocated, I am afraid. And that is where, there are challenges that we have faced. I remember when we got even the Sargodians into Sargoda one time, and I remember one of the more emotional of our Sargodians, he got up and said, sir, we will forgive, but we will not forget. And I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, what are you trying to say? But since I was the host, I had to go along. I said, fine, let's do 50%. Let's first do forgive and later on we talk about forgetting. You see, you have to come out of victimhood. This is the important message that comes out of Hali's book, that it was not one side which was a victim. We were collectively as a nation a victim of something that had happened to us. And that entailed people from West Pakistan and that entailed people from East Pakistan. So for one side to claim victimhood, I am afraid, will not, because it creates, then it is that same thing of doing 50%. I'll forgive, but I'll not forget. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, for God's sake. Yeah. And in my view, it requires, there are strong bonds, there are strong feelings amongst the people. I have my own group of my class fellows of 1965 in Sargoda, our class of senior Cambridge of 1965. And of course, there are half of them are from Bangladesh and half of them are from here. And we keep exchanging all sorts of funny things and what all. And I know what are the emotions. And I very much also look forward to meeting Hilaluddin sitting somewhere and, so many of them. But the fact is, it requires statesmanship. Do we have that? I still find politicians on both sides taking political advantages of what are the situations, what are the issues, what are the emotions. I think we'll only be able to move forward if our leadership was to display statesmanship. And I am very hopeful of that.